On a cold, dark night, a boy was trying to find his way home when he realized he had stumbled into a cemetery. He frantically looked for the exit, but around every turn was just more graves. Exhausted and scared, he slumped down in front of a small grave and started to cry. Suddenly, a strange light caught his eye, and he looked up to see a figure approaching. She was carrying an old lantern as she made her way through the graves. The boy asked the stranger to help him find his way out. The stranger looked down on him. She promised him that if he would listen to the stories about 3 different graves without running away, she would help him find his way home. The boy wiped away his tears and followed the stranger. She led him through the graveyard to a large, ornate grave and began the first tale. There once was an old man who was terrified of death. He used his considerable riches to turn his house into an impenetrable fortress, where no one could get in and cause him harm. One day, while checking the locks in his fortress, the old man fell and broke his leg. He called for help, but because no one could get in, he died from what should have been a minor injury. Now, he's doomed to haunt his own tomb, warning off anyone who gets too close. The boy rolled his eyes. He knew ghosts didn't exist and thought the stranger was just trying to scare him. He took a step closer to the grave. Suddenly, with an unearthly wail, the ghost of the old man appeared, broken leg and all. He wanted to run away as fast as he could, but he knew he still had to hear 2 more stories. The stranger ushered him to the next grave in the oldest part of the cemetery. There once was a strict school teacher who taught children in an old classroom in the middle of the woods. One day, when a storm was approaching, the children all begged to go home. The storm raged, blowing out the lanterns that lit the classroom. The children ran around frantically and bumped into the schoolteacher, spilling ink all over her blouse. The storm grew worse and worse until it blew away the schoolhouse, killing the schoolteacher and all the children in the process. In penance, the schoolteacher is now forced to wander the cemetery for eternity, helping children find their way to the afterlife. Then, the stranger opened her jacket, revealing an old-fashioned blouse covered in black ink. The boy realized the stranger was the ghost of the schoolteacher. He almost ran away, but he was so cold and tired, so he mustered up his courage and followed the dead schoolteacher to the last grave. It was the same small one she'd found him at. She began the final tale. Once there was a boy who thought he'd live forever. His parents warned him to always come home before dark. One moonless night, he lost track of time and found himself headed home in total blackness. He wandered the woods for hours, completely lost, until finally he saw a light up ahead. He ran to it, only realizing too late that the light was actually the headlights of a truck. He was killed instantly. But even then, the little boy refused to believe he was dead. He wandered the cemetery each night, looking for a way home, until he could finally accept his death. The schoolteacher set down the lantern, and the boy saw the name on the gravestone. It was his name. The schoolteacher offered her hand to the boy, but instead of taking it, he ran away, screaming, "He wasn't dead! He wasn't dead! He wasn't dead!" The next night, the lost boy was trying to find his way home again when he realized he had stumbled into a cemetery. There once was a boy who loved magic, but he didn't believe in it. He thought magic was simply a matter of tricks that could be mastered. Each day, his little sister waited for him at the bottom of the rickety attic stairs, begging to be his magician's assistant. She believed in magic, which annoyed her brother. But the boy would simply climb down the stairs, brush past his sister, walk straight to his room, and slam the door. She begged and begged for him to teach her magic. One day, the boy finally agreed. He walked toward his bedroom. His sister followed behind, excited. But then, he slammed the door in her face. "Ha ha ha, I made you disappear," he said through the door. The little girl gave up on her brother and found company with the old blind woman across the street, who surprisingly had some magic tricks of her own. Every afternoon, she would teach the little girl, until one day, she mysteriously disappeared, leaving behind a magician's box with a note for the girl that says, "A powerful trick that will even impress non-believers." She rushed home to the attic to tell her brother, interrupting his concentration. He scolded her, but was intrigued and followed her to the magician's box. The girl told her brother she would allow him to use it, but only if he let her be in his act. The boy reluctantly agreed. As the children lifted the box, they noticed a dusty portrait of the blind woman in her youth, wearing a black top hat, the kind a magician wears. The portrait stared at the children with glowing eyes. The whole way home, the boy couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The siblings set the magician's box down in their backyard. The girl, excited to finally do magic with her brother, climbs into the box. Still annoyed, the boy shuts the lid with the same force he used to slam his bedroom door the day he pretended to teach his sister a trick. "I wish you would actually disappear." And in the dark part of his heart, he meant it. He counted to 3, then opened the box. It was empty. Somehow, on her very first try, his sister had succeeded in hiding herself in the box. Why hadn't she revealed herself? He tried the trick again and again, but the box remained empty. The boy called out to his sister. Where was she? The boy spent the entire afternoon searching the house for his sister. She was nowhere to be found. Helpless, the boy ran across the street to the old blind woman's house. The windows were dark, except for the glowing eyes in the portrait. He ran back home, feeling again like he was being watched the entire way. The magician's box was still empty, its lid swinging open and shut with the wind. Night fell, faded into day and back into night, again and again. The boy had no idea how long it had been since he made his little sister disappear. Or was he the one who had disappeared? Finally, the boy laid the magician's box on the ground and climbed into it. He was so tired, but he'd stay awake to keep watch in case his little sister were to appear. The boy's eyes drooped shut. Darkness. "One!" screeched his little sister's voice. The boy gasped. His eyes shot open. After a moment, the lid to the box opened. "Ta-da!" sang the little girl, presenting her brother in the box. The boy looked around the backyard. It was summer again. It was almost dusk. Dazed, the boy begged his sister for an explanation. Where'd she gone? Where had he gone? What happened? "You're not the only magician around here," his sister said, as she bowed deeply to an imaginary audience. Her eyes glowed. There once was a boy who would terrify his teacher with fake snakes, horrify his little sister with monster masks, and petrify his friends with blaring bullhorns. Every time he pulled a prank, he would hear his family and friends scream, which made him laugh and laugh. The prankster's friends were fed up. They decided they needed to give him a taste of his own medicine. They lured him into the cemetery one night, knowing he wouldn't be able to resist a ghoulish adventure. At the cemetery, his friends taunted him. I bet you're too chicken to spend 10 minutes in that spooky tomb." But the prankster knew what was up and was determined to prove that he wouldn't get scared. He marched right into the tomb and set a 10-minute timer. It was dark and smelly and full of cobwebs and critters, and more than once, the prankster had to remind himself that nothing scared him. He reached an opening where there were large gravestones, and he took a seat. He would wait here until the time ran out. 8 minutes to go. When he looked up, he saw an old woman floating in the air, glowing as if lit up from the inside. "Welcome to my home," the woman continued. "My name is Winifred Williams. This is my home. You're welcome to stay a while." The prankster was impressed with this eerie illusion. There were no strings attached, no speakers or mic. He couldn't seem to find any tricks of the light. How are they doing this? He thought to himself. It's as if Winifred really is a... 10 minutes were up, but before he could leave, Winifred floated towards him. "Would you like to stay a while?" she asked. The prankster tried to appear confident as he rushed out of the tomb. But before he exited, he looked back to see Winifred faintly waving at him until she faded away. He took one step out of the tomb, and blam! A skeleton jumped out at him. His friends surrounded him, howling with laughter. "We got you! You were so scared!" the prankster had to admit. They got him good. His friends showed him the cheap plastic skeleton on a string that had given him a fright. The prankster admitted defeat and told his friends that Winifred was really a scary prank, and the skeleton was just the breaking point. "Who's Winifred?" his friends asked. And it was then that a haunting realization came over the prankster. He looked back at the tomb. Etched in the stone it read, "Here lies Winifred Williams, 1801 to 1880. The terror returned to the prankster's face as her last words echoed through his head. "Would you like to stay a while?" From the moment she opened her eyes and her parents said, "Happy birthday, sweetheart," she knew her 8th birthday was going to be a great day. She got a special breakfast with all of her favorites, pancakes and berries and 3 kinds of juices. She ate in a hurry, and since it was her birthday, she was allowed to have seconds. After all, the birthday girl gets what the birthday girl wants. When all her friends came over for her birthday party, the house filled with laughter and fun. The birthday girl was so excited that they were all there to celebrate her special day. She was thrilled to see a gigantic pile of presents and greedily ripped off the wrapping paper of each one. There were games, dolls, and cool new toys. She got everything she asked for. The birthday girl gets what the birthday girl wants. Finally, they brought out her cake and 8 candles were lit. Her family and friends sang happy birthday and told her to make a wish. The birthday girl shut her eyes and thought really hard. What's the one thing she wanted more than anything else? "I wish it was my birthday again tomorrow," she thought, and then blew out the candles, all 8 of them. As her friends began to leave the party one by one, all the excitement of her special day began to fade away. She was sad that she had to wait a whole nother year for her next birthday. That night, when she closed her eyes, she thought about how amazing it would be if it were her birthday again tomorrow. The next day, she woke up, and to her surprise, the first thing she heard was her parents saying, "Happy birthday, sweetheart." She thought it was a joke. She sat down for breakfast, where there were pancakes and berries and 3 kinds of juices, with seconds, if she wanted. She didn't understand what was happening and was too excited to care. Suddenly, Her friends showed up, and the party started anew. When her parents brought out the cake, she was finally certain her wish had come true. This time, she noticed, instead of 8 candles on the cake, there were 9. She didn't think about it too much. She was having too much fun. After the birthday song was sung, and it came time to make another wish, she thought, I wish it was my birthday forever! And as usual, the birthday girl gets what the birthday girl wants. The next morning, she again woke up to her parents saying, Happy birthday, sweetheart! She went down for her birthday breakfast, but something was different. Instead of pancakes, a plate of eggs was sitting in front of her. When she complained, her parents looked confused and explained that she said pancakes were just for little kids. The birthday girl thought this was strange, but that was just the beginning. When her friends showed up, they all looked so different. Some of them were complete strangers. The birthday girl caught a glance of herself in a mirror and couldn't believe what she saw. She'd grown 2 years older in 2 days. This was not what the birthday girl had wanted. This time, when she blew out her candles, she wished for everything to return to normal. That night, she struggled to stay awake. If she didn't fall asleep, she could make it to the next day, right? But as the clock ticked closer to midnight, she was overtaken with drowsiness and lulled into a deep sleep, waking up again to, Happy birthday, sweetheart! Another year older. With every new day, she saw her friends change. Her teenage years flashed before her over the course of a week. She saw her parents grow old, and one day, they weren't there anymore. Soon she was surrounded by her own family, people she could not remember meeting. And as she had every day for the last few weeks, when it came time to make a wish, she begged and she pleaded to not have another birthday tomorrow. The next morning, like every morning, she wondered, had she finally gotten what she wanted? Was her special day finally over? Then she heard, Happy birthday, Grandma! And she knew it was her birthday. All over again. There once was a boy who was obsessed with video games. From the moment he woke up until the moment his parents made him go to bed, he would sit in his dark bedroom killing enemy after enemy. He never played a game that he couldn't beat, until one day, a strange game appeared on his screen. A game that he didn't remember buying. In it, you were a strong hero with a sword, running through a medieval village, slaying ugly little goblins. But as the boy got farther in the game, more and more hordes of goblins attacked, until they eventually overwhelmed him. Then they would laugh, a high-pitched goblin laugh, mocking him. The boy became consumed by the challenge of killing every last goblin. But even though he spent every moment he could playing the game, it was never enough. The goblins always won. He needed more time to play. When his parents came to wake him up for school, he pretended to be sick so he could stay home and play the game. He played the game all day and all night. The next morning, his eyes had heavy bags and his skin was sickly pale. His parents told him to stay home from school another day, so he kept on playing. For 2 days, the boy didn't eat or sleep or get out of bed. All he did was destroy laughing goblin after laughing goblin, becoming more and more obsessed with each kill. Finally, as the sun rose on the 3rd day, he defeated the final horde and won the game. Before he could celebrate, the screen went to black. Then, a single goblin appeared on the screen, laughing at him. The boy tried to get up to get a closer look, but his legs wouldn't move. He looked down, and to his horror, his legs were disintegrating into tiny little pixels. He tried to scream, but before he could, his whole body pixelated, and he felt himself being sucked into the screen. When the boy came to, he found himself staring at his darkened room. He slowly turned around to see a medieval village. He was inside the game. Now he could play forever. But before he could hunt for goblins, he heard a clicking sound behind him, like controller buttons being smashed. He turned around and looked closer through the television screen. It wasn't his darkened room. It was another kid's room. A kid who was staring intensely at the screen, mashing buttons on her controller. The boy was confused. If she was the one playing the game, why was he inside of it? The game only had one hero, and they couldn't both be in control. With a growing sense of dread, the boy grabbed a silver shield and looked at his reflection. Staring back at him wasn't the hero's strong face. In fact, it wasn't a face at all. Just a pair of large, red eyes surrounded by fur. He was a goblin. There had to be some mistake. He shuffled around, desperately looking for some way out of this nightmare. Then suddenly, he heard boots pounding towards him. The hero rushed through the village, sword in hand, headed right for him. The boy cried out to the girl, begging her to stop playing. But the only sound that came out was a little goblin laugh. It was a beautiful day by the lake. There were picnics, games, and laughter all around. A group of children played by the water. They dared each other to swim past the warning signs to the deepest part of the lake and bring back a handful of mud to prove they could reach the bottom. Only one girl had the courage to take the plunge. And sure enough, she marched right into the water. The other kids watched in astonishment as she swam past the signs warning swimmers. No lifeguard on duty, no swimming past this area, and finally, danger of death. She reached the middle of the lake. There was no bottom in sight, only darkness. She looked back at the kids, now only specks on the shore. She reminded herself that she wasn't scared. She took a huge gulp of air and swam down to the dark, mucky water, full of slimy plants and fish that brushed past her. She kept swimming. Strangely, the farther down she swam, the brighter it got. And even stranger, as if by magic, it became easier for her to hold her breath. She finally saw the bottom of the lake. As she reached out to grab a handful of mud, what she discovered was unbelievable. They looked like some kind of fish people, and there were a lot of them. They had scaly skin, gills, and webbed hands. They were playing games, and everyone was happy. The surprised girl let out a gurgly yelp. Immediately, all the fish eyes were on her. Before she could move, one of the fish people waved her over, and the others gave her a gurgly, "Hello, welcome, come play." She waved back to the fish people, and then raced to the surface to tell the other kids about what she saw. She excitedly explained about the fish people, but they didn't believe any of it. She hadn't even grabbed the mud from the bottom of the lake to prove she'd been there. The children taunted her for lying. They told her she should go play with her new fish friends as they left to play somewhere else. Who needs them anyway? Thought the girl. I have new friends who do want to play with me. And with that, the girl ran back into the lake, swam into the deep, and through the mucky water to where the fish people played. They welcomed her back. But the magic of her lasting breath started to fade. She quickly scooped up a handful of mud and waved goodbye to her new friends. Their friendly faces contorted into vicious smiles, revealing rows and rows of tiny sharp teeth. The fish people began to surround her. "Don't go. Stay for lunch," the fish people said as they moved in closer. But the girl couldn't hold her breath any longer. She swam as quickly as she could towards the surface, but the fish people chased her. She glanced back to the crowd of hungry-looking creatures, moving closer and closer Flop! A webbed hand grabbed her ankle. Help! She screamed into the water, using the last of her breath. The fish person pulled the girl down into the water. She thrashed and swatted at the creature, losing her handful of mud in the process. She was so close, she could see the surface of the water. The girl kicked her leg free with all the strength she had left and swam to the shore as fast as she could. The other kids noticed the out-of-breath girl. What's the matter? Your fish friend's not playing nice? She looked at them hauntingly, and with a dreadful chill in her voice, she said, "You don't have to believe me. Just never, ever go to the deep." There once was a boy who was so excited to finally see a real hypnotist show, but when he got to the theater, it was sold out. Holding back tears, he turned to go, but when he saw someone drop their ticket, he picked it up and made his way into the theater. The hypnotist welcomed everyone to the show and peered into the audience, looking for a brave volunteer. The boy's hand eagerly shot up into the air, and the hypnotist beckoned him to the stage. He watched as the hypnotist took out a rusty pocket watch. He methodically dangled the pocket watch in front of the boy's eyes. The hypnotist counted to 3, snapped his fingers, and said, "You're now completely under my control." The boy got lightheaded. The hypnotist instructed the boy to cluck like a chicken. To the woozy boy, that seemed like the most normal request in the world. He clucked and clucked. The audience started howling with laughter. The hypnotist snapped his fingers to wake the boy from his trance. He told the boy what a great job he had done, but the boy couldn't remember a thing. The audience applauded again, and the hypnotist sent the boy back to his seat. That night, the boy had strange dreams. He was wandering around his house while everyone was asleep, looking for something. Then, suddenly, he was back in the hypnotist theater, and the hypnotist was reaching out his hand and laughing. The next morning, the boy felt groggy, as if he had barely slept. He hardly noticed that his mother was frantically opening drawers throughout the house. Her favorite necklace was missing. She wore it every day as it was a gift from her mother. The boy tried to help her look, but something felt wrong. It was as if every time he thought about the necklace, his mind went blank. The boy walked by his dad's study and looked at his dad's prized baseball, signed by Babe Ruth himself. He had always thought the baseball was cool, but now he suddenly had a desperate urge to take it. He quickly left the room. That night, he had another strange dream. He was in his father's study, staring at the baseball. He took off the glass cover and picked it up. Suddenly, he was in the theater again, throwing the baseball to the hypnotist. The boy woke up to his dad screaming that someone had stolen his prized baseball. The boy noticed muddy track marks leading into his room from the window. The boy was terrified, thinking that someone had broken into the house, until he realized that the tracks led to his own shoes. Suspecting he might still be hypnotized, the tired and scared boy made his way to the theater to find out the truth. When he entered, there was the hypnotist, laughing and admiring the baseball. The boy screamed and went to grab it, but the hypnotist just snapped his fingers, and the boy felt lightheaded again. The hypnotist told the boy to forget that any of this had happened. He instructed him to go home and continue to follow his instructions. To the boy, this seemed like the most reasonable request in the world. The next morning, the boy woke up to his parents frantically talking to the police. Someone had stolen their wallets in the middle of the night. The boy shuddered. Who could have done such a thing?